At 0347 Eastern Standard Time, the digital heartbeat of American aviation flatlined. Every air traffic control screen from Miami to Boston went black. For 11 critical seconds, 34,000 commercial and cargo aircraft vanished. Is this the most catastrophic systems failure in modern history, or the opening salvo of a new global conflict fought in total silence? The system rebooted, but what returned was not normal. It was a digital ghost. Phantom flight paths materialized on screens, showing non-existent aircraft moving at impossible speeds. Legitimate planes had their transponder codes scrambled, making a Boeing 787 appear as a Cessna 172. The chaos was instantaneous and absolute. Panic did not have time to set in. It was replaced by a cold, procedural dread. The Federal Aviation Administration issued an immediate nationwide ground stop, an unprecedented event outside of the September 11th attacks. But the order could not reach thousands of aircraft already in the air. Their pilots were flying blind, receiving conflicting, garbled instructions from controllers who could no longer trust their own instruments. The economic impact was immediate. Brent crude futures jumped over 7% in Asian trading within the first hour. Defense contractor stocks surged, with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon seeing gains of 5.2% and 6.1% respectively. The cost of the ground stop alone is estimated at over $400 million per hour. The world's most powerful economy was being held hostage, not by an army, but by lines of code. Within 20 minutes, the signal was traced. A deeply encrypted, wormhole-routed data packet originating from a server farm in Bandar Abbas, Iran. This was not the work of a rogue hacker collective. The digital fingerprint was unmistakable. Unit 6900 of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Cyber Command. This is the same unit credited with the 2017 Shamoon virus that wiped 35,000 computers at Saudi Aramco. They are surgical, they are patient, and they had just inserted a weapon into the central nervous system of United States infrastructure. The malware has been codenamed Shahab 5 by analysts at the National Security Agency. It is unlike any cyber weapon seen before. It does not crash systems, it gaslights them. Shahab 5 is designed to burrow into the core of supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA, systems. Its purpose is to erode trust. It subtly manipulates data, altering flight altitudes by mere hundreds of feet, changing runway availability data, and feeding pilots incorrect weather information. It is engineered to create a single, catastrophic accident that looks like human error. This brings us to our 3-minute rehook. The weapon is inside the network, but it is not fully active. Intelligence sources report the malware is operating at less than 10% of its total capability. The initial chaos was just a test, a proof of concept. The question now is, what is the IRGC's ultimate target? And what does this strategic paralysis mean for you, for global supply chains, and for the deployment of American military assets worldwide? The White House Situation Room is active. The President has been briefed by the Director of National Intelligence and the Commander of U.S. Cyber Command. All non-essential federal systems are being firewalled, but the FAA network is too complex, too interconnected, to simply shut down. It is a delicate surgery, attempting to excise a cancerous code while the patient is still alive and moving at 600 miles per hour. Cybersecurity teams at Fort Meade are in a desperate race against time. They have analyzed the initial payload of Shahab 5. It contains millions of lines of code, most of it benign-looking junk data, designed to conceal the active components. Buried deep within the code, they found dormant logic bombs, time-triggered subroutines scheduled to activate in cascading phases. The first phase was the initial system disruption. The second phase is imminent. The malware's sophistication is staggering. It learned and adapted. Initial attempts to isolate the infected servers failed. The code mutated, jumping from the primary FAA network to the secondary backup systems, and even into the networks of major airlines that interface with air traffic control for logistics. It is behaving less like a program and more like a digital organism, actively resisting attempts to contain it. This isn't just about grounding flights. The compromised network also handles all military air traffic within the continental United States. This includes the flight paths for E-4B Nightwatch command posts, the Doomsday planes, as well as the tanker and transport aircraft essential for global force projection. A strategic vulnerability of this magnitude has not been seen since the Cold War. The United States military is effectively pinned down within its own borders. This leads to the second critical rehook. 6 minutes into this briefing, the paralysis of military air mobility coincides with new satellite intelligence. A fleet of Iranian fast attack craft has just initiated large-scale naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for nearly a quarter of the world's oil supply. Is this a coordinated offensive, using cyber warfare to disable American response capabilities before a conventional military action? The geo-economic implications are severe. Insurance premiums for tankers passing through the strait have already quadrupled. Japan and South Korea, which are heavily dependent on oil from the region, are reporting emergency sessions to discuss their strategic petroleum reserves. The global economy, already fragile, is being pushed towards a systemic crisis, triggered not by a missile, but by a signal. Back at Fort Meade, the cyber warfare team makes a breakthrough. They isolate a key module of the Shahab 5 code. It's a communication protocol. The malware isn't just pre-programmed. It's listening. It's receiving new instructions from its masters in Tehran. The IRGC isn't just running a script. They are actively flying the attack, making decisions in real time. This elevates the situation from a cyber incident to a direct, ongoing, state-sponsored assault. The clock is ticking. The dormant subroutines are beginning to stir. Analysts project the second phase of the attack will begin within the next 90 minutes. The initial analysis suggested this phase would target airline logistics and scheduling databases, creating months of commercial chaos. But a junior NSA analyst, cross-referencing the code with fragments recovered from a previous attack on Ukrainian power grids, finds a hidden function, a trigger. The primary target was never the airlines. The penetration of the FAA network was a means to an end. It was a digital key. The FAA system has a direct, high-bandwidth data link with the North American Power Grid's command and control network, used to manage power loads for critical radar and communication installations. Shahab 5 was designed to use that trusted connection as a bridge. The attack is not about creating chaos in the skies. It's about to create darkness on the ground. The team at Fort Meade realizes with horror that the IRGC is attempting to trigger a cascading power failure across the entire Eastern Seaboard. They are targeting the infrastructure that supports 110 million people and nearly half of the nation's GDP. As the team scrambles to sever the link, a new alert flashes across their screens. It's a third, even more deeply buried protocol within Shahab 5. It's activating now. It is not an attack command. It is a data transmission. The malware has stopped trying to manipulate the air traffic control system. It is now using the FAA's own network to broadcast a single, repeating, high-priority signal, disguised as an emergency landing instruction. But it is not targeting civilian aircraft. The signal is being broadcast on encrypted military frequencies. At the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, the nerve center of NORAD, analysts scramble to triangulate the source. But the signal isn't coming from a single point. It's being broadcast simultaneously from thousands of compromised FAA ground stations, turning the entire civilian air traffic control network into a massive, continental-scale antenna for a hostile military command. The signal's structure is chillingly familiar. It mimics the authentication and formatting protocols of an emergency action message, the highly classified codes used by the president to authorize the use of nuclear weapons. But it is not a launch order. It's something else, something more insidious. This is the point, 9 minutes in, where the true nature of the attack becomes clear. And it is the most critical rehook of this entire event. The attack was never about airplanes. It was never about the power grid. Those were just stepping stones. This is about the unthinkable. But what if the goal isn't to start a nuclear war, but to make the world think you are? The Shahab 5 signal is not a command. It is a key, a cryptographic key, designed to unlock a very specific, highly classified vulnerability within the United States: nuclear command and control infrastructure. It isn't targeting the missiles themselves, but rather the system that reports their status. The IRGC's plan is an act of breathtaking psychological warfare. They are attempting to hijack the perception of reality. The code is designed to inject false telemetry into the Pentagon's own command systems. It can make a dormant Minuteman III missile in its silo in Montana report that its blast door is open. It can make a Trident submarine on a silent patrol in the Pacific report that its missile tubes are being flooded for launch. They are not launching America's weapons. They are making it look to the world like America is about to launch them itself. And here is the truly terrifying genius of their plan. The malware isn't just creating these false reports for American eyes. It is simultaneously leaking these fabricated status alerts onto international intelligence channels. Russia's early warning systems would detect what appears to be a full-scale American first strike preparation. So would China's. It is an attack designed to trigger someone else's finger on the button, a cyber-induced catastrophe intended to force the world's other nuclear powers to a DEFCON 1 level alert based on a lie. The trap has been sprung. In the White House Situation Room, the choice is impossible. Do they shut down their own nuclear command and control to stop the false signals, effectively blinding and disarming themselves in the most dangerous moment since the Cuban Missile Crisis? Or do they allow the signals to continue and risk a Russian or Chinese preemptive strike based on the illusion that America has gone mad? But a final question hangs in the air, a question that changes everything. Why? Why would Iran risk global annihilation for this? An act of this sophistication, this audacity, seems to exceed even their known capabilities and strategic goals. Is it possible that the IRGC is not the true architect of this attack? Could they be a proxy, a convenient, hostile banner for another, far more subtle power to hide behind? As the world teeters on the brink, the real enemy may not be the one holding the digital gun, but the one who quietly wrote the code and pointed it at the head of the entire world. That's when an analyst at the NSA's Tailored Access Operations Unit finds it. A ghost in the machine, a digital signature buried in the malware. It isn't Iranian, it's American, a perfect, byte-for-byte copy of a weapon from an abandoned U.S. cyber operations project. How could our own code be used against us? The project was codenamed Chimera, a ghost program, officially terminated years ago, designed to create the ultimate deniable cyber weapon, a tool that could perfectly mimic the digital signature of any foreign adversary, allowing the U.S. to launch an attack that would be blamed on someone else. It wasn't just stolen, it was turned on its master. In the Situation Room, the revelation lands like a physical blow. The enemy isn't an ocean away. The enemy is American, a rogue element with access to the nation's darkest digital secrets, using Iran as a mask to light a global funeral pyre. Their goal wasn't just to trigger a war. It was to shatter the very concept of trust between nations, to prove that in the digital age, reality itself could be hijacked. The president has mere minutes to convince his adversaries of the unbelievable, that the United States is attacking itself. He has to admit to the existence of a weapon no one was ever meant to know about, and pray he is believed. It is our own code, he says, his voice strained. A ghost from our machine. We are fighting to regain control. On the other end of the line, a long, terrifying silence. The NSA team has a desperate, last-ditch plan. Project Chimera had a failsafe, an emergency deactivation key built into its core by its creator. A key so secret, it wasn't even in the official project files. They're trying to rebuild it from fragmented data logs. It's a race against the global clock, as Russian and Chinese strategic forces are moved to their highest alert levels, their own protocols forcing them closer and closer to a point of no return. The failsafe is activated. It explodes across the FAA network, a counterwave of pure data integrity. On the screens at NORAD, in Moscow, and in Beijing, the false launch alerts don't just vanish. They are overwritten. A new message appears, in plain, unencrypted text, on every military screen watching the event. Chimera protocol deactivated. Source signal. Domestic. Authentication. U.S. Cybercom. The illusion is shattered. The failsafe did more than stop the attack. It exposed the attackers, a splinter group of ideologues, believing America had lost its way, sought to force its hand, to burn down the old world order to create a new one from the ashes. A civil war fought not with armies, but with algorithms. The immediate threat is over. The world takes a collective breath. But the silence that follows is heavy with a new and terrifying understanding. The weapon that almost ended the world wasn't a missile. It was an idea, wrapped in code. The old lines on the map no longer define the most dangerous frontiers. The battlefield has moved inside our networks, inside our systems of trust, and the next global crisis could be triggered by a single ghost in the machine. The conflicts of the 21st century are being fought right now, in shadows and secrets, with weapons you will never see. To understand the forces shaping our world and the crises just over the horizon, you need to look closer. Subscribe to global_crisis_radar.